I froze as I stared at the figure reflected in the hall mirror. Little did I know who she was. No amount of shut-eye could alleviate the bags under her eyes, which gave her a dead appearance. Her once vibrant hair became limp and lifeless, clinging to her face as fine creases began to appear around her eyes and mouth. A 15-year-old version of herself would have appeared in that mirror. An energetic, imaginative, and passionate young woman. For the most part, today it was just my mother, Sarah Whitaker, who had faded into oblivion while being someone else's wife and mother. In a state of bewilderment and disappointment, I continued to stare at my mirror as Brian barged into the hallway, just partially dressed for the occasion. His gaze hadn't changed since our early years of being together as he looked me over from head to toe. At least for the time being. It smacked of disdain rather than longing. He curtly laughed at the idea that she was planning to attend the wedding in such a state. Well, I take that back. You are absolutely not going. Blinking occurred to me. Excuse me. Listen, I spoke. He fiddled with his cufflinks, avoiding eye contact with me entirely. Tonight my boss is marrying. This isn't your average backyard cookout. This is an exclusive, high-class affair. Women who are tall, gorgeous, and exquisite will be brought by everyone who goes there. Your appearance is that of a simple gray mouse. Suddenly I recoiled. The words themselves stung, but the ease with which he tossed them at me hurt even more. I felt a knot form in my throat, but words escaped me. To whom was I to direct my arguments? I didn't appear like that, you know? That I did formerly. That I might have in an earlier age before Brian. The years of diapers, dishes, and exhaustion took their toll on me? He continued on. Oh, Sarah, you would simply humiliate me. I swear to God. Look in the mirror. Imagine me bringing that into a gathering full of famous people, models, and CEOs. Having you around would be devastating. I remained motionless as the pain of his words crept in. His comments and subtle jabs still hurt, even though I thought I'd become numb to them over the years. You're staying home, he continued with a clear tone. They will think you're sick, so I'll make that excuse. I think that's what's best for us both. My protest never materialized despite my best efforts. Not because I was in agreement, but rather because I had lost all fighting skills. During the past 15 years, I had been responsible for tending to his needs, including preparing his meals, ironing his shirts at night when everyone else slept, and cleaning up after him. Years had passed since I had purchased a new dress. The last time I brushed my hair without being interrupted by a wailing baby or a raging pot is probably a long time ago. Telling him that wouldn't accomplish anything. That wouldn't bother him. Had never before. My actions were predictable to him. Daily schedule. No use. I wasn't doing my job properly. I had only recently returned home. Being at home also made me invisible, at least until he needed someone to belittle, reject, or criticize. With a resounding bang, he bolted into his office. Aside from the antique wall clock's gentle ticking, there was complete silence as I stood alone in the corridor. The weight of the world seemed to have doubled down on me as my body sagged. I knelt down on the edge of the sofa and allowed myself to cry. Calm and unassuming. Constant low-volume waves of humiliation and anguish. What Brian said was hardly the worst part, though. It was that, in my heart of hearts, I had begun to think he was correct. In spite of Brian's words, I refrained from crying. I broke down in tears because I had allowed him to be right at some point. I had allowed myself to fade into oblivion. To the point that not even I could recognize myself. That night, as the door slammed shut behind him, I sat in the stillness, clutching that reality tightly to my heart. My spouse hadn't only embarrassed me. I had abandoned the innocent girl I once was. Just another ordinary morning followed. I got the kids their lunches, cooked breakfast, and made sure they remembered to grab their backpacks. Sitting at the kitchen table, Brian pretended as if nothing had transpired while he scrolled through his phone. I was going to say something, maybe even question his sincerity. I was about to speak, but my jaw clamped shut. Perhaps it was because I wasn't prepared yet. Tension was intense in the days that followed. We hardly exchanged words, merely the bare minimum required to maintain the family functioning. I attempted to bring it up again, not once but twice. It wasn't about outward appearances, I assured him. I was his wife and entitled to attend the wedding with him. Unfortunately, every time I attempted to engage him, he would either snort, turn away, or even remain silent. Last but not least, he eventually told me one night as I gazed down at my laptop that I am not going. Put it out of your mind. You are unwell, and I have already told them that. So that's it. I nearly caved. I was about to dismiss it. However, I passed past my daughter's chamber one night, just before the wedding. Adorning her beloved doll with a small dress, Vera delicately sat on the floor. Carefully stroking its hair, she tucked it into a doll bed while quietly humming to herself. Unexpectedly, I was struck by something as I stood there in the corridor, unobserved. Just what was I imparting to her? Why did I always remain silent in her presence? Should I allow her father to bring me down every time? That this kind of treatment was acceptable? Was its stillness a sign of power? Was that contraction love? I felt the ideas raging in my chest like a fire. I could never allow her to accept this as the norm as she grew older. My heart broke if I thought my daughter may grow up to see love as dominance and disdain. It was a restless night for me. Holding on to the strength that had started to flare inside me, I stared at the ceiling, practicing what I would say. By daybreak, it had gone from being a mere flicker to a continuous glow. Consistently small. I waited for the kids to go to school before following Brian into the kitchen. I then faced him directly, locked eyes with him, and spoke it with all the composure I could muster. Brian, I will be attending that wedding. Rising from his scowl, he raised his eyes to glance about. We're already past this. Nobody has invited you. I'm married to you. So long as you extend an invitation, I'm good. If you decline to accompany me, I will travel alone. On my own, I will arrive and explain to everyone why it was necessary for me to do so. His face shifted from bewilderment to wrath in an instant. This was a new me for him. Standing tall was the one. That one who showed no fear. You wouldn't dare, he snarled. A strong "I would" came out of my mouth. Challenge me. His expression changed from apathy to something else for the first time in what felt like an eternity. A look of terror crossed my face. For what seemed like an eternity, Brian just stared at me, as if he hadn't seen the woman before. All right, you win, he remarked after letting out a brief, sour laugh. There was a flutter in my chest. His frigid addition was that there was one condition. I won't be taking you along. Using a cab, you should aim to get there at least 2 hours prior to the start of the ceremony. You sneak in silently, find the farthest table in the rear, and maintain a low profile after everyone else has relaxed, been tipsy or distracted. Your very presence is enough to turn heads. My throat tightened as he said it, as if he were offering me a bone, a scrap of acceptance after he had stripped me of all decency. To be sure, I gave a subtle nod. It wasn't perfect. Found it offensive. However, I had, after a long period of silence, asserted my independence. Although it may appear sad, this was actually a minor triumph. This is my entry point. I fell into the living room recliner as he slammed the door behind him and departed for work. I was exhausted all over. I was more exhausted than I had anticipated after the confrontation. I fumbled for my phone, a little nervous. I reached into my contact list and hit a number I hadn't contacted for a while, completely unprompted. Hi, Marina. Upon hearing her response, my voice quivered. Is something wrong, Sarah? It was immediately apparent to her. There was no need for me to elaborate. She was the type of buddy who would do that. I sobbed and spilled the beans to her. What a slight. The marriage. The so-called condition. As she spoke, I could hear her breaths becoming more labored. She spoke in a quiet but stern voice, telling him not to move. Let's head over there. Excuse me? I inquired. By my side is Svetlana. Do not rush anything. Another one of my best friends from high school, Svetlana. Totally self-assured and, at all times, dressed like she belonged in a fashion magazine. Her sixth instinct for style served her well in her job as buyer for a high-end boutique. They had been watching me deteriorate for years, pleading with me to end my relationship with Brian and describing him as a dictator more times than I could keep track of. On top of that, I made excuses and had always been his defender. Not at this moment, though. The doorbell rang with a delay of less than 30 minutes. When I opened it, I saw Svetlana dragging a number of garment bags behind her, and Marina holding a huge cosmetics case. As soon as Svetlana entered, she took off her heels and lowered her gaze. "Very well, soldier," she remarked. "Dry your eyes. The ball is rolling on Operation Cinderella." Forcing a giggle despite the knot in my throat, I debated whether to sob more or give in to their embrace. Tightly, Marina embraced me. "Remember what kind of mouse he married. Let's remind that man." Then suddenly everything started to shift. A tornado of fabric, brushes, and giggles erupted in the living room. 3 gorgeous evening dresses emerged from the garment bags as Svetlana unzipped them. One was adorned with small gems that glistened like stars and was composed of rich navy silk. Another shade of emerald green, this time with a daring yet sophisticated slit and an uneven cut. The last one was an incredibly delicate blush pink composition that resembled a cloud of rose petals. I muttered, taken aback, that these were designer clothes. Svetlana beamed. "Think we'd send you into battle when you're still in your pajamas? Give them a try." I started by sliding into the verdant one. I let out a gasp as I shifted my gaze to see the mirror. Like a glove, the dress cinched my waist and hung loosely over my hips. That was the last time I wore anything that stunning. I have no idea when it was. My wedding day, perhaps. Like a surgeon getting ready to operate, Marina wasted little time getting to work, rummaging through her enormous makeup case. Skin care is our first priority. Staying hydrated is essential. Light up. We wish for you an inner glow that radiates outward. Like a mannequin, I sat on the chair as she applied various cosmetics to my skin, including primer, foundation, and a subtle highlighter. Swiftly stroking and mixing, her fingertips demonstrated exceptional skill. Smoky eye will do for now. Understated, unassuming. In just the right amount to make your eyes appear limitless. On the other hand, the lips, a shade of cherry. Something daring yet timeless. As she worked, I could see bits of myself appearing on the canvas. With each brushstroke, a different aspect of my personality came to life. At the same time, Svetlana rummaged through shoe and accessory boxes until she produced a clutch and a pair of stiletto heels. "Belong to someone who knows her value," she murmured, setting them beside me. After that, the hair. After washing it with a shampoo that increased shine, they blow-dried it into luscious waves. Just your best, magnified natural beauty. No forced updos or overstyled curls. I couldn't even look at my reflection when they were through. According to Marina, not yet. Finally, we must proceed. On the second floor, they escorted me to my bedroom's full-length mirror. I felt my heart beating as I closed my eyes. "Sure," Svetlana responded. "Right now." I froze as soon as I opened them. The weary mother of 2 who hadn't splurged on lipstick in years wasn't staring back at me. The spouse who had pleaded for tokens of his adoration wasn't the one who did it. It was the same old me, the one I had assumed had faded away. But now I was stronger, more vibrant, and exuding an energy I hadn't felt in a long time. Strong, self-assured, attractive. In the midst of the hazy tones, my eyes gleamed. I appeared radiant. It was as if the gown had been tailored to suit perfectly. I felt a sense of confidence and self-assurance radiate from wearing the heels. I appeared as though I belonged in that realm that Brian was doing everything in his power to keep me from. "Mom," a little voice called out from behind me. Pivoted away. With his toy truck slung erratically by his side, my son Fedor stood in the doorway. His eyes wide with wonder. "You look absolutely stunning," he exclaimed with astonishment. In that instant, something inside of me both shattered and repaired. "Thank you, my darling," I murmured as I bent down, kissed his forehead. It wasn't a simple trip to a wedding that I made that evening when I descended the stairs and left the house. I was re-entering a past self I had forgotten existed. I had overcome my fear. The car drew up at the country club's gates as a sea of string lights and delicate chandeliers illuminated the entrance's polished stone. A short distance down the road, I had requested that the driver come to a stop. After all, it was a component of the agreement. Brian's embarrassing state. Get there late and blend in so as not to be seen. Despite his insistence that I sneak in like a dirty secret, I had no plans to do so. With my heels making a steady clicking sound against the stone path, I got out of the car. The emerald garment let the chilly air brush against my skin, but I didn't feel a chill. On the contrary, I eagerly embraced it. That helped me stay attentive and rooted. Two of the security guards glanced over their shoulders at me as I drew near the main door. One stood up straight while the other two blinked. Standing straight and level-headed with my hair neatly styled, makeup applied but not touched, and eyes unwavering, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the door's mirror. "Walk like you own the room," Svetlana said, and her words resounded in my head. It was as if someone had downed the volume the second I stepped foot in the ballroom. There was an abrupt cessation of sound, including dozens of voices, conversation, laughter, and the clinking of glasses. I was the center of attention. A wave of attention washed over me as I entered the large hall adorned with crystal chandeliers, marble floors, and golden sconces. Nerves jangled. People stopped talking. A fork fell on the floor. Attention was drawn to one man. And after that, still another. Next, a full table. Standing there was I. This is the story of the woman who was meant to remain unseen. Someone instructed the woman to remain unseen. Brian felt humiliated by the woman. She had become the focal point of the space. Kept my composure. Not a twitch. Following Marina's advice, I carried myself with an air of subtle self-assurance as I made my way across the room. Brian was visible to me across the dance floor. Accompanying the groom were his boss and a handful of other senior co-workers, and he stood close by them. Drinks in hand, they were giggling at something. However, Brian's gaze tracked the movement of the audience as silence descended. He looked over at me. His grin faded. As if his brain was struggling to process what his eyes were seeing. He gently parted his lips and furrowed his brows. At that very moment, he didn't notice his exhausted spouse, so there was no recognition, just disbelief. He caught sight of a woman who was no longer his. Someone darted into my path just as he was about to move. "I don't think we've been introduced," an incredibly smooth-voiced southerner stated, "and I apologize." The man in the tailored navy suit stood tall and composed, his hair showing signs of minor graying at the temples. He looked at me with genuine interest, not haughtiness, in his kind and perceptive eyes. With a glass of champagne in his hand, he introduced himself as Daniel Montgomery. "The best man is a friend of the bride and groom for life." "Thank you, Sarah," I said as I took the drink. A steady, warm touch between our fingers. For an instant, he stared into my eyes before grinning. "Oh, Sarah, what a beautiful name." Fitting. "Who just pilfered the room?" I inquired. Even though I felt a flush coming on, I kept staring. "Is no one else around?" he inquired. Brian stayed motionless at the far end of the room, his countenance turning gloomier as he watched us, so I pointed out that my husband was present. Daniel looked directly into my eyes, his grin fading for an instant. As he raised his glass, he spoke. "Takes a lot of courage or naivete on his part to go out on your own." "No," I said. Smiling, I merely took a taste of the champagne. With me, Daniel remained at all times. As our discussions veered off course, he deftly brought attention back to me whenever someone attempted to distract him. Neither was he overly possessive nor acting. He only existed. In a nutshell, he was more interested in my hobbies than my spouse. Regarding my preferred forms of entertainment, novels and museum visits. Even though I haven't picked up a paintbrush in years, I told him I used to and still do a lot of painting. "That's a shame," he remarked, his leaning in so that I could smell his perfume. Subtle, quite pricey, putting one at ease. Seems like you have an eye for the good things that most people miss. I don't even know how long it's been since someone had said anything similar to me. A gentle, lilting waltz, something old-fashioned and leisurely, came next, as the band sound changed and the lighting became slightly lower. With a small bow, Daniel walked over to me and held out his hand. Am I allowed to? Thoughts raced through my mind. I looked across the room for a split second. With his arms crossed over his chest and his jaw so tightly clenched that I could feel the muscles vibrating beneath his skin, Brian stood motionless. Very well done. He guided me onto the dance floor as I put my hand in Daniel's. For the first time in what seemed like decades, I let go as his hands gently rested on my waist and his other hand clasped mine, taking a deep breath while leaning into an embrace. Something else, both warm and exciting and terrible, moved through us as the music did. There were others who were observing as well. Whispers were heard. Smirks spread across their faces. Some of Brian's co-workers laughed, and I caught wind of it. All this time, Brian has been concealing her. Just look at her. There's a true queen in his household. Redness spread to Brian's ears. What about me? I was indifferent. There was a brief moment on the dance floor when I forgot I was a mother. Housewife. Not me. I was never someone's shame or problem. I was merely a woman. A stunning woman. The room resounded with applause when the music concluded. Nobody was left out. Not even the newlyweds. The groom Daniel chuckled. No matter where you go, you're sure to meet a stunning woman. He went to face me. Sarah, your beauty was flawless. I grinned courteously. However, Brian materialized at my side just as I was about to reply. With a firm grip on my arm, just above the elbow, he grinned tightly. Thanks, he responded, his voice still low. We are currently on our way back home. I don't care what you say, he said. Has just begun dragging me away from the door. To Daniel I gently waved farewell. As I faded into the darkness, his gaze remained fixed on me, calm and soothing. Back home nobody spoke a word. The sound of Brian's iron fist on the steering wheel made the leather squeak. As the city lights sped by, I gazed out the window. A wave of both exhilaration and fear continues to tangle with my heartbeat. As soon as we entered the house, it went boom. Please tell me what that was. The door was slammed shut as he spat. I felt humiliated by you. In a composed manner I stated, I didn't throw myself at anyone. This included a wealthy jerk. I was asked to dance by him. He touched you all over. Responding with a quiet but unfazed voice, I said no. Like any other dancing pair. He put his hand on my waist. He approached you and growled, making you appear foolish. Much like an overused say it, I dared you. Express yourself honestly. After his pupils constricted, he forcefully grasped my arm with his fingers. Think a little cosmetics and a dress can transform you someone else. No matter how pretty your box is, Sarah, you are still nothing more than a gray mouse. My whole being exploded. I yanked my arm free, and after flinching for 15 years, I stared him down without fear. No, Brian, I answered dryly. I am not the unimportant one. Yes, you are. I felt a dull aching in the spot on my arm where Brian had held me the following morning. Not quite a bruise, but with the lingering appearance of a stain, there was a subtle crimson mark. Seated on the bedside in my robe, I gazed across the room at the vanity. The cosmetics had been removed a long time ago. The garment bag was used to stow the dress. Underneath my flesh, though, remained the lady who had gazed into the reflection of the night before. Out of my side pocket slid something little and rigid as I retrieved my phone from my handbag. One playing card. I took it in my hands and studied the raised letters. Charlotte, Daniel Montgomery of Montgomery Properties. The Tar Heel State. Then there's a phone number. He must have sneaked it into my possession before the night came to a close. I hadn't really realized how subtly it had occurred. As we said our goodbyes, there was a brief moment of comfort as his fingers brushed across mine. Back then I hadn't given it a second thought. But now that I had the card in my hands, An electric, dangerous feeling stirred within me. Not at all. Although I was still married, I was also dead. A repressed desire to send him a text message lingered in my chest. With the phone in my hand, I walked around the kitchen repeatedly tapping and erasing the same message. For last night I am grateful. Not specific enough. Meeting with you was a pleasure. Overly stuffy. At long last, I put my thoughts into words. Sarah here. So much appreciated. I regretted it the second it went to send. My chest tightened with anxiety. What if he chose not to respond? What would happen if he believed I was after him? Can you imagine if Ding wasn't there? He replied within a minute. My hope was that you would contact me, Sarah. You have been on my mind non-stop. Might I give you a call at some point? As the words radiated like a gentle light, I fixated on the screen. Instead of talking on the phone for a few days, we just texted. Discussions that lasted all day, at a leisurely pace. Though he never took pride, he did ask questions. He was always relaxed. Carefully, he took everything in. He filled me in on his passion for photography, his frequent business travels, and the times he spent weeks without meeting someone who gave him the silent treatment. One night, he even went so far as to inquire as to what brought me joy. I was hesitant to start typing. My previous work included landscapes and still lives. For a long time I didn't do it. In response, he asked whether she had any of her work. Please show it to me. I finally break down and send him a picture of an old painting I did after looking at the laptop for what felt like an eternity. A shattered ceramic bowl with fruit. On a worn-out wooden surface, shadows dance like smoke. His reaction was immediate. That is just amazing, Sarah. Wow, you're really gifted. You must ensure its survival. Recreate the masterpiece. Just for you and no one else. There was a change in me. His perception of me was like a much-needed drink of water after a long dry spell. There was nothing he needed from me. There was no sign of sympathy from him. He merely had faith in my potential. I began to believe it as well, but only gradually. There was no flash of inspiration that led to the choice. It was as stealthy as an incoming flood. A gradual buildup of evenings. I messaged Daniel for a while. Every morning, I would wake up next to a man who would not look at me. On afternoons when the house was emptier than it ever had been before due to the overwhelming silence, I was waiting for Brian to get home from work one night. In the living room I took a seat. The kids will be spending the night at my sister's. All I wore were jeans and a cozy sweater. No accessories, no makeup, and no special attire. My determination was the only thing that shouted defiance about me. After coming inside, he undid his tie and blinked briefly at me before making his way to the kitchen. I spoke softly to Brian. Turning around, he stood up. I've decided to end my marriage. His laughter filled the air. Really found it funny. Striking and boisterous, like if I had just cracked a joke. He scoffed at you. Where are you going, Sarah? How much money was it? Is anyone going to look after you? That man from the nuptials? No, I said. Do you honestly believe he desires you? A mother of 2 with a lot of extra stress. No, really. In a month, he'll become bored and you'll be dragged back with all your might. So what if it does happen? I whispered to myself. I prefer being alone to being here. His grin diminished. I got to my feet and strolled right past him, ignoring him completely. I contacted Marina the following day. At my door, she and Svetlana appeared within 20 minutes. No questions asked. Trunk open and boxes prepared. Our packing was brisk. Requirements only. Peril. For I had not handled these art supplies for a long time. Picture book. The beloved plush teddy that Vera adores. Fedor's notebook. Little did they weep. Why? They didn't inquire. They knew, even though they were very little. Brian did not return home when we departed. Having not happened in 15 years. Leaving, I closed the door firmly. It was as if I were externally locking a cell. Daniel took his time. He never pressured me into moving in with him. I needed space and time to heal, and he got that. However, he was there for me in every critical aspect. To aid me in filing correctly, obtaining child support, and protecting our assets, he recruited a prominent divorce attorney, someone strong and unyielding. Naturally, Brian attempted to fight. Alienation, denigration, and trickery. Every time he tried to speak, the lawyer cut him off. We never had to have another one-on-one conversation. Near the kids' school, Daniel assisted me in finding a tiny flat. Plain and simple but clean, warm and secure. A reading nook stocked with Vera's beloved books was his gift to her. On weekends, he would accompany Fedor to soccer practice. Just to be there, not to take their father's place. Time and again. This time I drew. I created color palettes, mock-ups and flyers. The sensation was similar to relearning breathing. In a one-on-one session, my professor told me, "You've got something rare." A single pupil, along with a voice, seized the moment. His remarks lingered in my mind. Sometime after that, I was able to secure a position as a junior designer at a Charlotte boutique agency. Quite a small group. Aspirations that are lofty. Like I belonged, they greeted me warmly. As if I could contribute in any way. Just as I did. Adapting to Brian's mood swings was no longer the foundation of my life. The foundation was laid upon reclaiming my identity. Not only that, but I had company this time. It took nothing in the way of a spectacular display. Daniel did not book a plane to take me to an exotic locale or rent out a restaurant. We were enjoying supper at a cozy bistro on the lake near Charlotte one night. Laughter resounded as the children enjoyed their sweet treats. Over the river, the sun was setting in mellow tones, creating an atmosphere of gentle safety. Grasping my hand, he extended his arm across the table, his thumb running over my knuckles. "I love you," he stated plainly. "Your arrival in that emerald gown altered the ambient temperature of the whole ballroom, and I have adored you ever since." Even with my eyes watering, I grinned. "Your perspective on life and the love you have for your children are two of my favorite things about you. I would love to witness it with you for the remainder of my life." Next, he withdrew a little velvet case that was neither showy nor dramatic, and within it, I beheld the most delicate ring that I had ever laid eyes on. He embodies all that is simple, graceful, and considerate. "My love, Sarah Whitaker, would you be my wife?" I was completely unprompted. Under the commotion of the children's cheers and embraces, I mumbled a yes. We settled into the home we had chosen jointly a few months down the road. A lovely craftsman-style house nestled in a peaceful neighborhood with flower gardens and oak trees. Above all else, it stood out with its floor-to-ceiling windows in the upstairs room, large kitchen, and porch that wrapped around the house. My studio was born there. Daniel stocked it with canvases, easels, brushes, watercolor paper, oil paints, and shelves upon shelves of paint. There, with the sun streaming in through the windows and soft music drifting from the speakers, I lost track of time. Not content to only reflect on my past, but actively shaping my future self, I picked up a paintbrush once more. Everyone was happy. When Fedor moved to the area, he decided to join an art group. Ballet was Vera's first art form. There was love, music, and a lot of sloppy eating and puzzles in our home. Abounding affection, it gushed from every entrance. In the meantime, Brian fell apart. He went to great lengths to uphold the image for a while, arriving at work in a sharp suit and tie, claiming he was better off and that I had escaped with a wealthy man. Yet the reality eventually caught up with him. The whole tale was told to his co-workers. "I thought you were a decent man," his boss said him after he had sat him down at his wedding. "You were clearly unworthy of the woman you were with, it seems." Not due to me, but because the rock upon which Brian had built his life, the one I had subtly supported, had crumbled. Brian lost his job a few months later. Shirts no longer need to be ironed before sunrise. Done with waiting for hot food. His life was about to crumble without his reliable wife. His second attempt at dating was short-lived. His anger and bitterness intensified. Then he began to drink. Calls from friends ceased. The invitations ceased arriving. After what seemed like an eternity, I was finally leaving a cafe with Daniel and the kids one afternoon, over 2 years later. I can't even recall what we were laughing about. Maybe Vera's marshmallow mustache or Fedor's terrible joke. However, I caught sight of him as we crossed the pavement. "Hello, Brian." Peering over the street, he rested against a light, holding a paper cup in his hand. His clothes were tattered, and his face appeared pale and sunken. His silence was deafening. He remained silent. He merely gazed. He was aware of what he had lost, and I knew it. A wife, a family, and the possibility of a life not yet lived. Pride, control, and ego led him to discard it all. Finally, the righteous had been vindicated. Not through retribution, not through courtroom drama, but through life itself. Standing alone on that sidewalk, he watched as the family he may have had slipped away, destined for a future he would never get a chance to see. I, on the other hand, turned my back on things entirely.